Special thanks to the GBGuns patrons. Thanks to them, coming up, we have the Rost Martin RM1C Tabletop Review in Field Strip. We'll go over what's in the box, take a look at the manual, fit, finish, and features, some trigger talk, check chamber support, and talk about what will be in the range video. All coming up next on GBGuns. If you are joining us for the first time or a long-time viewer, either way, please drop a comment. Thank you, patrons. They're the ones who afforded us this opportunity. I was curious about this gun myself and reached out to Rost Martin, said, hey, I'm a published gun writer. I reviewed over 400 guns. I use the same protocol to review every gun, so it's fair treatment, etc., and got nothing back. Sometimes that's a company being busy. Sometimes, like certain brands that I won't name anymore, but you notice aren't on the channel, that's because there's something they don't want me to show people, or they prefer to work with influencers instead of unpaid media like myself. Sometimes it's just a disrespect for you guys, for the audience. They say, no, your audience is not who we're trying to reach. I don't know what the cause is, not trying to put any negative on there. Maybe they were just too busy and decided not to reply. But thanks to our patrons, every few months we have enough patron funding stocked up to be able to do something like this, buy this, and not be dependent on the industry sending stuff. Because, like I said, I'm not paid for any of this. Most of the channel comes out of pocket. It's very expensive, so those patrons are greatly appreciated. The Rost Martin RM1C. Opening up, we get a simple but nice and clean display. We've got our pistol, we have a 17-round magazine and a 15-round magazine. And I bet some of you are noticing the styling on this. Witness windows on the back, which is where I like to see it. Looks a bit like this 15-round magazine from RX, or AREX, the Slovenian company now owned by the Czechs. Does it fit? We'll get to that. But I'll show you, we get a 15-rounder, we get our 17-rounder, we get the pistol. The chamber flag was in it. I've already had it out, of course, because I've been playing with the gun a little bit. And then, level 2. Moving down to level 2, we have our manual, our federally mandated lock, 1 optics plate, and hardware and tools. Optics plate is metal, nice and beefy. I do not know off the top of my head what cut that is for, but it does have a number 1 on it, so that leads me to believe they make other plates. You just only get 1 in the bag. We also have 2 additional back straps. This is something that I used to show on the channel, but YouTube calls that gunsmithing and won't let me show you anymore. But I do highly encourage you to try different back straps on any gun you get that has multiples. Try changing out the grip. It is impressive what they can do for the shooter. Next, we'll take a look at the manual. Now, our smart viewers know I look at the manual because that gives you an indication of how well a company wants you to understand the product. The better you understand it, chances are the better the time you're going to have. It also, to me, shows a little bit of pride and care. This one is 4-color, but in place of the usual red, they used a yellow that is somewhat akin to the yellow on their followers. Kind of cute in there. They mentioned the safeties. Everything is nicely outlined. The images are photos that have been adjusted to highlight things. Very nicely done. The big question I always get is, can it shoot +P ammunition? According to this, you want to make sure that your ammunition is stored in a space vacuum, because they asked to not attempt to fire ammunition that was exposed to oil, grease, water, or direct sunlight. Now, I know what they're saying, but that could have been worded a little bit differently. But it does say in here, also to avoid foreign and or outdated military surplus that has any non-standard markings. That's kind of curious. But they say in here, a big warning, Rost Martin firearms are designed to safely function and safely and reliably with a wide range of quality manufactured brass-cased ammunition loaded to SAMI or military NATO standards. Use of cast lead bullets is not recommended. So what they're saying there is they're suggesting you stick with brass. They're suggesting you stick with SAMI. And NATO, which is 10% higher pressure than SAMI, is also the same pressure as +P, but they do not address +P specifically in here. Now, this barrel length, there's really not a need for +P, but people always ask, so I always look it up. The rest of the manual is pretty nicely done. The images are very clean and clear, and they address most of the details that you would want to know as an owner. Now let's get this stuff out of the way and take a look at the gun. Now whenever there's a new gun, especially from a new maker that no one's heard of before, people are always concerned about magazines. It comes with two. I pointed out that the cuts, shape, size, structure, angles, everything seem identical to what's in the RX Delta. The 15 round magazine does not fit, unfortunately, because of these wedges into the gun. Stops you there. But the 17 round magazine fits and locks the slide to the rear and ejects cleanly. So I'm going to say it's safe to assume these are the same magazine bodies, it's just a different floor plate on the two. Can I run the 15 rounder Rost Martin in the AREX? Yes, I can. So it is, the AREX is omnivorous, the Rost Martin is not, but it appears that the 17 rounders, now keep in mind, anytime you have an extension like that, the reason why gun companies have this kind of base, now this is obviously just extending off of the bottom of a 15 round body, but the ones that come up high, that little sleeve, is to prevent you from over inserting. It's possible to smash the magazine in too far and either cause internal damage to the operation of the gun or unnecessary wear on the magazine catch on the magazine or inside the gun itself. So anytime you're using something that sticks out like that, just be gentle on the insertions. I'm sure many of you are like me and said, who is Rost Martin? Isn't that the name that should be, I don't know, on a linen or cookware line or something like that? It doesn't sound like a gun company. Well, I really don't know. As I said, I reached out to Rost Martin for more information and did not receive any response back. I had heard that this gun is awfully similar to the AREX Delta. I've also heard that they licensed some of the tech out of it. In fact, you might notice that the pins are in the exact same spot. Now, the AREX Delta Gen 2 is a chassis gun that you can remove the firing mechanism. You see the serial number down there on a metal plate and replace the grip module if you want. This does not appear to be that way. The serial number is placed in the exact same spot, but it is printed onto the frame itself. And as we get inside the gun, you'll see that the internals are also a bit different. The back end of it, the striker cover plate, the striker indicator, even the sights, the magazine pattern, a lot of it feels very AREX Delta to me. The polymer itself feels like SIG polymer to me. Feels a lot like the pre-320 polymer framed SIG grip modules. But the only marking on here is Rost Martin and Texas. So it's quite possible that they started up out of nowhere, created all of this stuff, and got production ready. Or there's a lot of borrowing or outsourced manufacturing going on. That's not a discredit to Rost Martin. You should be aware that that happens a lot in the firearms industry, especially in the AR world. A lot of guns and a lot of gun parts are made by brands, the consumers of which will argue till they're blue in the face which one is better, when really they're coming out of the same shop, just with different labels on them. With that bit out of the way until we have more information, and as always, check the pinned comment for the full review over at GBGunsDepot.com. That's where I'll have the specs, the pricing, where I bought this, all that kind of stuff, as well as any additional information that comes to light between when I film these videos and when I write that article. Our standard fit, finish, and features test, we lock the slide to the rear, flip the gun upside down, and check the magazine release pressure. And we've got ejection, not just release. It really kicks it. It is an ambidextrous magazine release, pushing from the other side. We get the same positive ejection, which is nice. Some of those ambi ones, just because of the way the spring is oriented, isn't the same for lefties and righties, but this one seems to be that way. We also have ambidextrous slide controls. Hey, it worked that time. When I tried this, just as soon as I picked it up from the shop, I was messing with it. Oh, there we go. And it didn't really want to go for the left-handed side, but the controls are there. That might be a break-in thing, that might be a torque thing, as tends to happen. You end up with a thin stamped piece of metal reaching across to actually hit the activation spot on the slide over here. We'll find out. Starting up front, we've got a nice, pretty style target crown on that barrel. I love those. It's usually like at around 11 degree or something like that flare. I think they look good. It also protects the rifling should you drop the gun on the muzzle, but it's a neat kind of trumpet look. We have a lot of slide to frame play up front. Some people are concerned about that. Don't worry, the sights move too, so should this ever rest differently shot to shot, your sights will be slightly different, and you'll be adjusting for aim anyways coming off of recoil. It's usually not something that consumers, shooters notice. 3 spots of pick rail underneath the front. We do have some texturing, I'm assuming so you can see it better, on the front of the trigger guard. If you can hear that, it is a suggestion of texturing. There is, it's a visual texture, but it doesn't really hold on. In fact, it's almost better to just use the slick plastic, interestingly enough. But we do have nice index points with a slight flare there for your trigger finger and your support thumb. Whether or not those actually hold on will depend on your hand. We'll get a feel for that at the range. Coming in for our trigger talk. Safety dingus really prevents anything from moving, and that's a very light dingus. If you guys hear that, there's kind of some grinding stepping going on to the wall. Firm short break, not a lot of over travel. Kicks you out with spirit, past the wall, and come back to the wall again. The trigger weight, it feels heavier. It is on the heavier side. Now, as I've said many times, I stopped using a trigger pull gauge because it's been my experience, the feel is more important than trigger weight. Unless it's below 3 pounds or over 10 pounds, most of us don't have a problem pulling the trigger. This is in that realm, but probably on the heavier side. We'll see when we get to the range if it really impacts things. You can see our magazine release is slightly shielded in that it kind of comes flush off. This plastic is very slick, which I notice kind of feels good, but almost feels strange after so many guns putting lots of texture through there. The important parts for texture are the front strap and the back strap, or if you're an isosceles shooter, a little more on the side here. Nice radius under the trigger guard. We do not get a double undercut, as is in mode these days, but that's all right. It's for a 15 round gun, I'm getting 2.5 fingers on it, so you can imagine kind of like a Gen 3 Glock size, Glock 19 size grip. That's about where my hand ends up on those guns as well. Coming underneath, we do have generous beveling for the magazine well. And this texturing is that micro fissure style. It's not super aggressive, not very grippy. Combined with the slick parts of this, it feels more slippery than it looks. Whether or not that impacts shooting, we'll find out on the range. Coming around back, slide to frame fit. We have the same play and wobble. We arm that striker, see if that changes. Nope. And there's our sight picture. We have a nice blacked out, kind of horned U and a white front sight. Good sight picture, I like that. And this is of course optics ready. We also have a witness window in the top as a loaded chamber indicator. These are better than nothing. I prefer something that is tactile because looking in this generally requires enough light and a little more time than something that you can just feel, but at least it's there. The finish on the slide I really like. I hope the camera is capturing it right. It's very much like a DLC. Feels pretty slick, but these serrations are good and sharp and pretty deep, so that shouldn't be an issue. Plus we have that flat ledge to rack off of. Next we'll field strip the RM1C and take a look inside the gun. Field stripping the Rost Martin RM1C is akin to the AREX. Check for clear. You've got to pull back on the slide a little bit, pull down on these takedown tabs, and then release the striker, or release the striker, then pull it, whatever order. But anyways, pull back, down on these, and it goes forward just a little bit and then pops off the top, very much like the AREX. Those of you guys who are curious, same thing. But now we can see the differences, and sorry, the AREX is dirty. I shoot the thing. But it, I mean, it's pretty darn similar. Come on, camera. There we go. So you can see the interior and design, etc. looks pretty much exactly the same, which lends to that whole theory or question of whether or not it's a licensed clone. In fact, since we're here, bam, the Rost Martin Delta fires. That's crazy. And can we go the other way so I can... And now we've got the Arex RM1C. A lot of interchange there, which, come on, there we go, is interesting. It appears that what we basically have here is a domestically produced, slightly more expensive Arex Delta without the chassis interchangeability. And the chassis interchangeability on the Arex Delta is not something that really anybody uses, which is kind of frustrating, I guess. I mean, there's a whole bunch of guns out there that are like that, where the potential for expansion and aftermarket just doesn't happen. You can see we have a captured spring that's rather heavy, and there's that yellow color again. Steel guide rod. We'll pop our barrel out, same, and give you a look inside the slide. Very cleanly made. Everything looks pretty fresh and clean. My serial number is in the 2500 range, so it appears that many of them have been made and they're out there. Next, we'll check for chamber fitment and support. You can see we've got a rather broad feed ramp with a little bit of chamfering around the edges there. Chamber fitment and support, I'm going to drop in a round, in this case some Liberty Civil Defense. I'm going to listen for the plunk. And then, didn't quite go all the way in. There's a little bit of oil in there, that might be it. Or it's a rough chamber. Let me clean this chamber real quick, and then we'll get a better feel for it. Ran a bore snake through there, let's see. There we go, that's a little better. And what we're looking for is how much of the brass beyond, zoomed in too much for the camera to focus, there we go, that edge is exposed, and it appears to be not much at all. Fully supported chamber, or pretty darn close. I mean, that is the strongest part of the brass. That is great news in case you should happen to have a case that wants to rupture. Helps keep the forces heading out the barrel instead of down into your hand. I would expect, especially for this being so close to the Arex Delta construction, that we would have something that was ready for NATO ammunition. Reassembly is simply the inverse of disassembly. As I do that, I'll describe what's going to be in the range video. You will see the absolute first shots through the gun. My first time firing it on camera, no warm-up, no practice, no highlight reels, just real shooting. Full magazine plus one. See how these this gun runs fully stuffed. Then we'll take it to What's for Dinner and put 10 more different loads through it to see what the gun will eat. Take it to the spinner for sights and trigger control, which I like these sights, not sure on the trigger yet. Then do some practical accuracy before giving you concluding thoughts. It appears to me that this is basically, as I was saying earlier, a domestic Arex Delta 1 for a few dollars more. The Arex Deltas are a little bit cheaper because they've been out for a while. I like the texture on this thing better. I don't know, I can't compare until I shoot the Rost Martin. It is, I mean, the Arex it's got a stiff spring, but it's smooth. However, I have shot this quite a bit. I even took it to a training course. This is brand new. I guess it feels about the same. The spring feels heavier, but that may just be that it's newer. That'll be curious. Thank you, patrons, for funding this. Thank you, patrons, for voicing that you wanted me to review this. Get out to the range as soon as possible. And, well, it's funny, joking, because you guys know that obviously it's over at GBGunsDepot.com before it's on YouTube. Only the patrons get to see things faster than people who read the website. But interesting pistol here. It's still quite affordable. I was surprised at how affordable it was when I bought this one. If you guys are curious about current pricing, etc., that of course will also be in the article. Thank you all for over 400 guns and 9 years of support, and we'll see you on the range.